people have talked about in Sacramento was in Rancho Cordova, and that was in March of 1979. And so then you don't really hear in the news anymore after that of anything that he's done in Sacramento. It's sort of like he just wandered off. And that's what everybody talked about. Well, he's gone. He's left. And but they always knew that I worked with retired Lieutenant Larry Crompton on some of this. And what he said many times, and it's in his book, Sudden Terror, is that this guy was very, very dangerous, and you could tell that he was going to harm someone. And at the time, they didn't know that he had actually already probably committed murders, since he's been charged with the murder of Claude Snelling. He is a suspect. He is charged with 13 murders at this point. He is not has not gone to trial, so he is the alleged serial killer in these 13 murders that he's been charged with.
You mentioned Larry Compton. In your other book, The Creep Among Us, The Golden State Killer After the Arrest, you mentioned that you have some notes from Larry Compton. Do you have actual police reports and ballistic reports and stuff like that in the book?
I have some ballistics information in The Creep Among Us about it, as to we couldn't figure out why, with the ballistics information that they've had over time, why they didn't realize that it really was a cop. Or if they did, they certainly never put that out into the public.
Any suspicion that they were covering up?
Well, I can't really state that. I don't know that it was ever intentional, but it makes you wonder, why, if they had some idea, was he military? Yeah. From descriptions of the boots he wore, the things that he, the ammunition that he had access to. Back in the day, only law enforcement had access to certain types of ammunition. And this guy seemed to have that from the get-go. And in my book, I show you how he is tied to the Zodiac and the ammunition that was used in some crimes that were way back before he was even called the Zodiac. Again, it was ammunitions that were gotten at military bases or law enforcement type ammunition.
When did you start to suspect that this could be the Zodiac as well?
Well, I think most anybody who actually has been from California, I grew up in Sacramento, I was born at Mather Air Force Base. When you're there, and I was a child when the Zodiac was running amok, when you start to hear these stories, and it's not that far away from Sacramento, the Bay Area is actually, a short drive, hour and a half, 2 hours, depends on how you go. But the geography is such that Vallejo, Napa, Solano, I have relatives in Napa, I have, family, most people do in California. We have family all over the state. And so you start to realize how close everything really is. It's an hour drive. It's a 20-minute drive from his crimes in Auburn to Sacramento, from Sacramento to the Bay Area to Vallejo, different areas that he was in, San Francisco. It's only a couple hours away. And this is a guy who originally wanted to be a California Highway Patrol officer and who ended up being a policeman. And so he loved to drive. He would drop into a place and go do what he wanted to do and then leave and do it again somewhere else.
You mentioned a couple of times that he loved to drive. How do you know he loved to drive?
Because of the patterns of his attacks and where he went. I mean, when you think about him living in Auburn and driving to Concord, for example, or if he would drive from, Auburn to Sacramento sometimes 2 or 3 nights a week, but he just liked to drive. You could tell that this is a guy who loved to be out. He knew the areas. He knew the highways. He worked off Highway 80, which takes you to the Bay Area. There's a hub, really, and if you look at maps in Sacramento, you can see how all the interstates connect. He loved to go down Highway 99, which is what was the main drag. There was no I-5 yet. He used to drive to Stockton, to Modesto, Fresno, all these places, Bakersfield. There's all these places he would go, and you could tell that he just loved to drive. And then he would be back to Auburn. You can track him. He showed up at work. He was never late. He didn't take days off. So he just liked to drive.
Yeah, too bad they didn't have cell phones back in those days, because now they can trace those patterns of those phones, what towers you're hitting, They would have.
Yeah, well, here's one for you.
Yeah.
If they had kept the rape kits, if they had tested the rape kits, if they had the DNA profile from all the rape kits from everywhere he struck and everywhere he went, you would have a trail from that. You would be able to connect all the monikers that this man deserves because of all the rapes that he committed and all the crimes he committed. You would have his DNA all over the state of California.
Now, explain to us, why didn't they preserve those rape kits?
Well, interestingly, some of the departments did. Luckily, Contra Costa County had some rape kits and specimens left that they used to connect to the original Night Stalkers, which is what the Golden State Killer used to be called. They tried to connect the murders down in Southern California to the East Area Rapist because of the way he was, his M.O. Larry Crompton said, God, this guy, I just know in my gut that it's the same guy. And a lot of people thought it was the same guy. And so they finally tested the DNA profile that they got from the Contra Costa County rape kits with the rape evidence that was left at the murders, the scene of the murders. And that's when they realized that he really was, in fact, not only the East Area Rapist, but he was the original Night Stalker, and he was a serial killer. And that was in 2001.
Don't they have some evidence in the Zodiac killings that would provide DNA?
They've tried to extract DNA from the stamps and the envelopes and different other things, I'm sure. But from what the public is told and what we know, they haven't been able to really figure out who it was. It's a partial profile. And we were told in 2018 that profile was going to be looked at again and tested or tried to figure out, if they could get a full profile from the stamps or the envelopes or something. And we have heard nothing since about May of 2018 about what the results are until the show The Scary People came on, and they said, a criminalist on that show said that they had only a partial profile, that they were really not able to determine who it was from that profile. So, and that's one of the things when I was looking at the possible connections and murders of D'Angelo, what else he could have done besides the 13 murders, what I did was think, well, maybe they'll finally tell us. When he was arrested, I thought maybe somebody will finally tell us if it's really him. They'll rule him in or they'll rule him out. Because in the back of my mind, the geography was such that I thought somehow they're going to figure out that maybe it's the same guy. Really, some of the things he said at the scene of the rapes as the East Area Rapist, the things he said, the things he took, the things he did, were very similar to what he said as the Zodiac persona.
What about the Golden State Killer and the East Area Rapist? Were they sending letters taunting police?
Yes, they both did that. The East Area Rapist didn't do it as much as the Zodiac did, but the East Area Rapist sent a poem to law enforcement and to the media in 1977, I believe it was. And so it's been interesting. I tried to find out, actually, if the Excitement's Crave poem that the East Area Rapist sent, if, in fact, it was typed or if it was handwritten. And I would love to see a handwritten sample of that, because I was told that from the law enforcement guy that I was talking to, he said, from my memory, I think it was handwritten. Well, I sure would love to see that and compare it with not only D'Angelo's work, handwriting, but also the Zodiac's handwriting. And we do have samples of all of that now.
Yeah, they have forensic linguists out there, too, as well, that can examine written material and make comparisons.
Right, and I've actually talked to a friend of mine who is a forensic linguistic person, and who I thought, well, if we can't get a sample of his handwriting, let's see if we can figure out if the way that he talks, the way that he writes, if they can figure out if it's him. And now we do have some handwriting samples from D'Angelo too.
What did the forensic linguist say?
Well, we haven't gotten any results on that yet.
Okay.
They like to really take a lot of samples to try to come up with their report, and so I have not heard back on that yet personally. But there are other, I'm sure law enforcement's got to be working on it, and they may have the answer, actually, but they are not telling any of us.
Now, DeAngelis, is he still alive today, or has he been executed?
No, he hasn't even had a trial. He's in Sacramento County Jail. And they were just about to the point where they were going to make some movement on it in May. He had a court date in May. And, of course, everything's got pushed back because of this pandemic.
Right.
So he's 74 now.
Any connection with DeAngelis to, like, organized cults, satanic cults, anything like that?
No, not that I've heard of anything like that. I his family's from New York. I don't know what kind of connections they had back there. His dad came out in the 50s in the service. He has connections through his father and his family to different bases, like Hamilton Air Force Base, I believe it was, and a couple others down in Vallejo and Van Nuys and other connections. So I'm sure he was able to find his way around as a teenager with his dad before his parents were divorced. So.
And the nature of his military service?
Well, he was in the Navy from September 1964 until August of 1968.
Did he see combat?
He was on the Canberra, which did go to Vietnam. I'm not sure exactly what his job was, but I know at one point he did lose some fingers. Not sure exactly how. I know he was in a hospital ship in 1965 for about 4 days.
Have you tried to contact him since he's been incarcerated?
No.
Okay. Now, how did he earn a living after he left the police department until 77 years old?
He was married. He was married in 1973, and his wife was in law school. She became a lawyer, family court lawyer, and I'm sure that kept him afloat after he lost his job. They purchased a house in 1980 in Citrus Heights, which is where we found him 30 years later. And then also she left him in 1991. So he had to go. That's when he finally pops up again as employed at the, I believe it was a Save Mart in Roseville.
Okay. So. All right. Well, let's take a little commercial break. We are with Ann Penn, and we're talking about her books, What If, The Golden State Killer, Zodiac Solved, and also a couple of other books. She has several on this same topic, this theory that DeAngelis, the Golden State Killer, is also the Zodiac Killer. So when we come back, I want to really lay out your case, step by step, why you believe these are the same man. We'll be right back with more of Ann Penn after these messages. And by the way, don't forget her website is annpenn.wordpress.com, and that's Penn with two N's, P-E-N-N, and that's Ann, A-N-N-E. So it's A-N-N-E-P-E-N-N at wordpress.com. We'll be right back with more of Ann Penn. What If, Golden State Killer, and Zodiac Solved. The Creep Among Us, the Golden State Killer, Killer After the Arrest. Murder on His Mind, the case of the original Night Stalker, a.k.a. Golden State Killer, East Area Rapist, right after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and